All right, and welcome to the Hidden Tracks podcast. My name's Shane Murphy, your host for this podcast as always. You can find us at myhiddentracks.com. You want to write us, tell us what you want to hear. myhiddentracks99@gmail is our email. You can find us at Hidden Tracks on Facebook, Hidden Tracks 99 on Instagram, and at myhiddentracks1 on Twitter. You can find this on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. If you like what you're hearing, please 5 stars, write a review, tell us how we're doing. Today, I am delighted to have been a fan of for a very long time of the band MAE. And today I have Dave Elkins with me. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get down to it, man. I was supposed to see you in June with the Juliana Theory, and we all know what happened. So how have you been coping through this stuff?
Yeah, 2020, right? It's been the weirdest year of my entire life. It's been the most difficult year of my entire life. It's been the most transitional year of my entire life. And you're referring to some shows that we had announced with our friends in the Juliana Theory. We were going to play our album, The Everglow, from start to finish. This year, 2020, it would have been 15 years old. And the Juliana Theory have an album that I listened to the year I graduated from high school. It came out in the year 2000 called Emotion is Dead. And we've been friends for, I guess 15 years, probably longer. My old band, Sky's the Limit, played some shows with Juliana Theory back when I was in high school. And I've been friends with Brett, the lead singer, for a long time. And we talked to each other back in the fall of 2019 about playing some shows, celebrating our albums. And that was going to look like a lot of fun for us. And then, of course, early March, COVID-19 made its way into the U.S. and shows started getting canceled almost immediately. And then for us, our shows that we had booked in June and July, they quickly were postponed. So I saw the writing on the wall. Not like I predicted COVID-19. I think what I mean to say is once I understood that the pandemic was real and it was not going to be letting up anytime soon, I started to, I guess, use COVID-19 as a mirror for myself and to look at what I was up to in my professional and personal life. And I've got a studio here in Nashville where I live. And, of course, the entertainment industry got hit real hard. Bands, artists couldn't tour. And the kind of bands and artists that I produce and work with in the studio, a lot of them were putting their careers on hold because it didn't make sense to necessarily put a lot of time and energy and resources, money into making music when it seemed like it wasn't going to be easy to promote that music and to kind of follow the path that we're all used to when it comes to putting out new music, new art. You promote it, you play shows around it, you open up for artists open up for you, you do all these things. And by and large, the entertainment industry was put on hold sort of in the same way that, small businesses are put on hold. You can go to Walmart, I guess, in a lot of cases, 24 hours a day right now. But these mom and pop stores, they're the ones that get hit hardest. And for me, I wanted to kind of refocus and maybe reacclimate during this season with my studio. Wanted to sort of kind of rediscover my vision for production, for being a studio owner. I wanted to rediscover my passion for songwriting, for composition. I've worked freelance for a number of years doing composition for film and television and commercial songwriting, composition writing. And all of this stuff was just sort of on hold for me and for a lot of people like me in the industry. So I'd mentioned to you right before we got started, you asked me if anything was off limits, and nothing is at all. I took advantage of an organization called Music Cares that's run through the Grammys, and got a little bit of financial aid so I could even go to intensive therapy, just sort of kind of analyze where I'm at from a mental health and emotional well-being standpoint. And I've got a 19, almost 20-month-old daughter, and being in Nashville for almost a decade now, I kind of wanted to invite some new therapy and some new ideas in, so then that way I could come through this pandemic and have a refocus, a better understanding of myself, a better understanding of how to contribute to society, to sort of understand how to be a good father. My daughter is the sweetest surprise that was ever given to me. And with that surprise, comes sort of a new learning curve. And I wanted 2020 to be a year where, in spite of all of the surprises that we've, by and large, all have gone through, I didn't want to lose sight or focus of who I am and who I'd like to become and the trajectory that I was on anyway. So it's been like a very interesting spiritual, emotional, mental, physical journey. When I say physical, I also was playing with my daughter the Wednesday before Labor Day back in early September. And she was just learning how to walk at that time. And we were playing on the driveway early in the morning, and she fell just like a toddler would, just a scrape here and there, no big deal. But like I said, she's my surprise. So I kind of lunged out of adrenaline and fear for her injuries and stuff like that. And when I did, I fully ruptured my Achilles tendon. Oh. And so that was a physical surprise that put me to where I had emergency surgery about a week and a half later. And I'm going through physical therapy to learn how to walk again right now. So 2020 has been a shocking year, and I'm just sort of coming out of my processes and feeling really confident and really humbled by all of the things that I've gone through, whether I chose them or they chose me, just like this pandemic, unfortunately chose all of us. And sort of want to take 2021 and have a long list of goals that are all accomplishable, and a new set of passions that are either revitalized or brand new for me, so I can bounce back from this really, really sort of peculiar and at times pretty dark year that I think we all can say has been tough for us.
Yeah, I think it's taken a toll on, you bring up the mental aspect of everything, and I know it's something that I think all as a society struggle with trying to approach the subject in a way that's not, I don't want to say that doesn't harm someone when we approach the subject. And did you struggle with any type of mental illness before you decided to go to therapy, or is it something that you felt you need to better yourself so you don't fall into the pitfalls of not taking care of something?
Yeah, I think for me, it was the latter. I am generally a very positive human. I love relationships. I love connection. I love vulnerability. And I think that probably like a lot of people my age, I'll be 39 in February, so I'm pushing 40.
I'm already there.
Okay, so I think like a lot of us, life when you're young, you challenge it and you decide where you're headed and what you're going to do with it. And sometimes as we choose our careers, as we go through the realization that you have to make money in order to sustain and to live, as you build families, as you just take on financial responsibilities, maybe after a period of time, life takes a hold of you. And I could look at my life and my accomplishments on paper and be proud of the person that I had become, but that wasn't satisfying me. I was feeling very much like I was becoming more of a shell of myself as I was living in Nashville now for almost a decade. And I've always been passionate about music, songwriting, production, the whole process, but I was starting to sort of like just look at it as a rat race. And studio ownership was sort of just me always chasing my tail to make financial ends meet. And I was just seeing that I was maintaining, and at best, I had forgotten what it was like to passionately pursue art and creativity and thrive. And I think that a lot of us in the music industry can see it as a business and win at the business side of music. And some of us were born artists and creators, and we need to let that be our North Star. And I think I'm somewhere in the middle, but I lean a lot more in my mind towards the love of creativity. When I'm doing production, I enjoy connecting with the humans that I'm producing. And you spend a lot of time when you're in a studio in that composition world, in that production world, just sitting by yourself. A lot of chosen and not chosen isolation. And so for me, I saw that I was kind of playing a game that I didn't like the way that the rules were made. And it was kind of making me become sort of a shell of myself. And I saw that 2020 was going to make us all look at ourselves, whether we wanted to or not, and acknowledge the things that are going on in our professional, personal, emotional, spiritual lives that that if you want to change and you can change them, it's kind of the perfect time to do so. And my daughter would help me do that. My little girl is such a beautiful, vibrant light in my life. And in order to show her the passion that I have had for years and years as a young man, as a kid, as an adult, for music and creativity, I want to find a way to bring that back. And I think I had to go dig incredibly deep to see what was at the core of me that was kind of making me more complacent and a little bit lost. And some of it was definitely growing up in the music industry. Some of it was living 750 miles away from my hometown family and friends. And some of it was just sort of me kind of, like I said, running that rat race and losing a little bit of myself. And so for me, it was wanting change and wanting to rediscover me, or kind of maybe discover myself for the first time, so I could understand how I make decisions and how I build relationships and how I build trust. And, in the era of everything from COVID-19 to fake news to social media, you pay attention to things that kind of grab you full on and get all of your attention. You sort of would go, well, wait a minute, what does this even mean to me? Like, what am I paying attention to? What's my focus? And who am I? I think that's something that a lot of us would ask ourselves with all of the distractions that have maybe culminated during a year like this. You can watch the news obsessively to see the number of new cases. You can watch the news to figure out what tweets our, current president is putting out there. And you can start to find yourself sort of obsessed with these issues that you have no control over. I mean, you can control COVID by, following protocols and social distancing, but you can't determine what's happening in another state or another city that you don't live in. And so I just kind of saw myself going one of two ways, either letting it get the best of me, or I was going to let 2020, I was going to take control of myself in 2020. And, 2020, as it was said, probably before all of this craziness that got a hold of us, 2020 vision. And I think maybe all of the distractions made a lot of us lose sight of it. But I was determined to do whatever it would take of me to regain focus. And so, there's a lot of aid available to musicians in need. And when I saw that COVID was going to take opportunities away from me for financial earning opportunities, I was like, well, if I'm going to go get aid, then I need to do something that's going to sustain me for the long haul instead of just like maybe pay some bills and then kind of be back at square one. So I said, well, I need to examine my mental health. Like I think a lot of us probably should do from time to time, either way, pandemic or not, election year or not, industry suffering years or not. I needed it. I wanted it. And I was grateful that the opportunity was there for me.
I commend you for seeking that out on your own too. It's really, I know it's a tough thing for people to do. And I implore people that if there is something wrong, I try to be a good friend and help people and talk to them when they're having troubling times, but it's always, different perspectives come from different people and there's help out there. And if people need it, they should seek it out. Or if you don't think someone's strong enough to seek it out themselves, you should help them do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's really important to acknowledge. From my perspective, I'm one to see the glass half full to a fault. And so sometimes I might not be able to recognize the help that I might need and to go and ask for it. I tend to sort of try to look at things with rose-colored glasses so I can help other people see things that way too. And I needed to take a step back and be like, well, things aren't always okay, and that's okay, but we should do something about that. And so that's really what I encourage anyone who would ask me what it's been like for 2020 from my perspective. I'm like, look, if you need help, if you want to talk to somebody, do it. Like, this is the year where everybody's going to welcome each other with open arms. There's so many political movements. There's so many social movements, so many social justice movements. This is the time where we actually, we should have always had it from the get-go, but this is a season where everybody gets an opportunity to look at each other as equals, which we are equals. And so if part of being equal means not having all of the answers, not having it all figured out, well, no one's got it all figured out, and money's not the answer, and politics isn't the answer. And I'm a musician because I love how music has always filled me up, filled my heart, filled my soul, filled my spirit up. And whether I want to or not, some days, like being a songwriter, a musician, that means that other people might consider something that I've created a way to get themselves filled up. And
yeah,
so,
and that's what we like to talk about here is that it's that song that people can take ownership of something that you made, and you may not ever know how it's perceived by someone like me, but that song could have saved my life. That's, you know, and you don't know that, and people, quite honestly, probably never tell you that. But as an artist, for me to tell you, I hold you in the highest regard, and give you the utmost respect for being able to create something that to me is the universal language in the world. It
wow.
is music. It really, I think, and I don't say that lightly, because when I try to explain how it's the universal language for us, all I ever point to is look at No Effects, a punk band, goes to Japan, and people who don't even speak the language are screaming the lyrics at the top of their lungs. It's a universal language, and it brings people together, and it's something that's extremely important. And it's a hard thing for me to watch, in today's, where they cut the arts out of schools, where kids need to learn that stuff. And I'm sure for you as an artist who has a child who's growing up, I'm sure some of that will weigh on you at points, but you yourself being an artist, you can, invoke that into your girl, which is great. But a lot of people don't have that, and trying to figure out how to do that for people is going to be, I don't want the arts to go away. And I also don't want the arts to become someone just hitting, squares on a drum machine. I don't, I want, we're going to need that actual artistry for, someone grabbing that guitar and sitting down by a campfire, and all of a sudden everybody just is in the same place and all your worries go away.
Wow. I appreciate you saying that. That's, it at times is one of the primary motivating factors for me when I'm creating. A lot of times I'm just learning a new way to express, whether it's a new chord, a new instrument, hearing a song written by somebody else, being inspired by that and wanting to learn it and learn from it. And then eventually it turns into a song. But like I said, I do a lot of composition for like film and television, and that stuff is cool. I'm using my fingers to make, quotation when I say that, but a lot of it is truly busy work. It's filler. It's not, to do in 48 hours, and it's a hard press to get to the finish line. And then you go back and you listen to it, maybe a month later, and I'll be like, I don't remember creating this. And it was because it was motivated by somebody else's perspective, somebody else's artistic needs, or even just like commercial needs. Sometimes I'm like creating music for a pharmaceutical company. I'm like, I don't even take pharmaceutical drugs, so I don't even know how to make sense of what's going on here from a personal standpoint, like I do when I write a song from my heart. And so, eventually people would come to me, and I'm so grateful for like Facebook or Instagram or whatever, Twitter, where you can learn somebody's story. And if they say to me, that person says, hey, your song did save my life, or your song got me out of a depression or a dark time or a drug addiction or a failed marriage relationship, something like that, I just go, wow, I had no idea that something that I created just by going through the motions of learning some new chords and learning some new ideas and then putting some of my heart into it, that it could ripple out and have that kind of effect. And, over the years, I've had people explain songs to me that I've written, where I think I've got it figured out, and my motivation to write a song came from a personal place, and maybe it's like an angsty song. And then a person comes up to me after a show and says, hey, this song helped me decide to go to drug rehab and stop numbing out. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't even write that song with that in mind. But now I can't ever go back and think of the way that I wrote the song, I can only think about this beautiful story that, as soon as you write a song and you give it out to the world, it becomes everyone else's. And so I get that opportunity to learn other people's stories through the lens of songwriting. And it helps me kind of go back to my own situation and maybe learn something that I wouldn't have the opportunity to learn otherwise. And songwriting and songs and albums, et cetera, like that's where community is. I don't like sitting in a room by myself, staring at a computer screen, creating music in the box. I love playing with my friends. I love listening to what my friend would say is a good idea for a groove, even though I have an idea for a groove myself. Like, oh, well, I want to hear what you think, and I want to hear how you express, or, oh, you want to change that chord there? Okay, well, let's do that. Like, let's collaborate. And that's where community, really thrives, is during collaboration. And when people can perceive art individually, then you get like this, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, opportunity for understanding and expression. I think, of course, in a time like this, we need that more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point, and I've said it many times on this, that me as a listener to your art form, I take ownership of it, and I perceive what I want the song to mean to me. And sometimes I think, I've watched a lot of musical documentaries. I read a lot of books and autobiographies, and sometimes I get upset when the artist explains to me what the song is, because I already came up with my interpretation of what I think it is and what it feels to me, and I don't want that taken away. And sometimes, listen, it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes I'll hear a song and I'll be like, oh my God, what was he going through? I feel the same exact way. Meanwhile, it's a happy song. I go back a lot of times to Elliott Smith. Like, if you really dive into it, he sounded like the saddest man alive, but his songs were all about love, and they were all happy songs, just to a different key. And, it's seeing things differently like that, taking that ownership of what someone else has done. And music you can do that with.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't like hearing from my favorite artists and songwriters what songs are about from their perspective, because as soon as I hear a song for the first time, I immediately let it penetrate to my soul, and I go to a place that I can't help, where it, even if I hear a song for the first time, I might get nostalgic. And if somebody asks me, well, what is that song about? I say, well, it's about what you want it to mean. I don't want to tell you how I wrote the song. I want you to interpret it how it helps you the best. And I've always loved being able to take music and let it be my soundtrack, let it be, the background to my journey. And I would never want to take that away from anybody else who's listening to a song that I've written and be like, what, tell me what that song means to you, Dave. I'm like, no, I want it to mean something to you personally and individually. So I can tell you how to play the song if you want me to show you the chords or something, but otherwise I want it to be your song.
Yeah, no, and that's a perfect way to view it. I think sometimes having that open book to, it means something different to you too, because you wrote it in a way. So sometimes you need to keep that for yourself, and, and I appreciate that. I do. And you brought up a point about being nostalgic and the memories of music. And my main question that we always pose here is, when did music change for you? And we mean, when we say, when did music change? When you're a small child, you grow up singing, theme songs to the cartoons you're watching and Sesame Street sing-alongs. But at some point, you heard something that completely changed your outlook on music and needed to find something more of like that. Do you remember when that was? And if you remember what band or music or song that it was?
Wow. Yeah. So my parents split up when I was really young. And my earliest childhood memories would be my mom dancing with me in my grandparents' house to the Thriller album on vinyl. The album came out the year I was born in 1982. So I'm sure I wasn't, under a year old. And of course, she would have listened to that record after its initial release, one of the biggest, most influential albums in, music history, and probably was 2 or 3. And when I would go be with my dad, we would drive. I would ride, of course, in his car, and he would always have music on. He would sing, and I would sing with him, and we would harmonize together. And music was a really big part of my life as I connected with my parents individually. And so, I'm born in 82. So by the time I'm 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I'm really, really seeking out music on my own. The 90s were just such a great time for diversity in music. You'd watch MTV for an hour in 1991, and you'd see Smells Like Teen Spirit. You'd see everything from alternative to like pop.
Yeah, you had pop, like, hip hop, alternative. I mean, rock. I mean, it was. I still think it was the greatest decade of music was the 90s.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of don't see things that way, especially if they've lived, a longer life than I have. They'll say, "What about the '60s? What about the '70s, '80s? Even, just like anything from like the development of the synthesizer and pop music." And I agree. I mean, I love my favorite band of all time is the Beatles, but my other favorite band of all time is Radiohead, and Radiohead is a 90s band. I mean, yeah. Radiohead is obviously changing music every time they put out an album, to this day. And, but, OK Computer came out, I think in 1997 or so. And, just being able to have that kind of, all in perspective on music. Z104 was the name of the radio station in Virginia Beach that I used to listen to. And you'd hear Crash Test Dummies, and then you'd hear SWV, and then you'd hear Snoop Doggy Dogg, and then you'd hear Pearl Jam, and then you'd hear Gin Blossoms, and then you'd hear Soundgarden. And, it was just like, it was constantly giving another way to listen to music, another genre, another beat, another groove, another melody, another lyrical idea that was quite different from the previous one you listened to 3 minutes earlier. And I just love that. I'm half Puerto Rican. A lot of people don't know that about me, but there's a strong love for music in the Puerto Rican culture. And I also grew up in church. So like, there's a lot of music that you listen to and that you sing along to when you're in church. And I played drums in church. I played bass, played guitar. I remember going to the YMCA, and my family on my Puerto Rican side rented a room out, and everybody was salsa dancing in there. I was just having a blast and watching my grandparents, dance, and my cousins dance, and also loved, Stone Temple Pilots and Rage Against the Machine. And so to have all of that music just kind of swirling around my life, and then going back to the very early ages when, my mom would show me PYT, Pretty Young Thing, off the Thriller album. I'd be like, man, this is like one of the coolest songs I've ever heard. I just couldn't get enough of music, and it was an instant connection to anybody that I was in relationship with. My mom would put on music and we'd sing and dance. My dad would do the same thing. And my grandparents would dance, and I would watch them, and I would be in awe. I'd see them love on each other through dancing. Yeah. And not the kind of music that I'd listen to on my own time. So I just think that I was very fortunate to see and listen and embody music with family members all the time from a very young age.
Yeah, and that's just, I mean, it's a beautiful story. I had quite a similar experience with my grandparents growing up, where, I mean, they would eat dinner and then they would put on their record or their tape at the time, and it was always some old school jazzy stuff, Louis Armstrong or Tony Bennett or Billie Holiday, and they would dance. And it's just one of those things that I always have that memory, and it's so beautiful. And I think about that. And for you to have that too, that's awesome. Just music being a part, my father was the same way. When he was home from work, on the weekends, Sunday he'd be working around the house, but at night he'd be listening to his records, Gordon Lightfoot and Bob Seger, and just have his records on, and just having that influence and all that little extra stuff. And then growing up in the 90s, I grew up in the 90s, and I think the 90s had for sometimes grunge gets shit on a lot because it was easier. A lot of punk rock too. Well, it was so easy, and everybody was getting a record contract, and anybody could do it. But I think it formed an artistry and gave us a new crop of artists that could say, okay, well, if they can do it, why can't I? And I think that was pretty inspirational time for what we started to get in the early 2000s with bands such as your own.
The bands themselves?
Yeah, like, was that your inspiration, that 90s era music, to, start doing something?
Well, I think that a band that meant a lot to me and an artist that meant a lot to me in the 90s was the Nirvana transition into Foo Fighters for Dave Grohl. I was a drummer in my first band, and my dad's last name, the name that I changed when I was about 20 years old, because I grew up in two different stages of my life with my grandparents, my mom's parents, the Elkins family. My last name was Jimenez with a G. And so I was Dave G, just like Dave Grohl was Dave G. And he played drums in a band, and they were awesome. And then he went into a studio soon after Nirvana was done, sadly, of course, and played all the instruments and wrote all the songs and sang everything and wrote all the lyrics. And that was that first Foo Fighters record. And I wanted to be just like Dave Grohl. I wanted to play all the instruments. I remember I would read the liner notes on all of the albums. I wanted to know who played what instrument and who wrote what song, and who produced it and who mixed it and who mastered it and what record label it came out on. And going back to that era of music in that time, I was a member of those subscription, like mail order CD and tape. Let's see, there was Columbia House, there was
Columbia House, BMG, yeah.
Member of both, because I needed all of the music I could get my hands on. And, you do this thing where you start off, you get like 12 CDs or tapes for a penny.
Yeah.
and you gotta buy so many more over the course of the year. Well, I bought all the ones I needed to buy over the course of the year, like a month into it. Not because I was trying to get ahead of the game and I was being thrifty. It was because I just couldn't get enough music. I loved it. I always wanted to own it. I wanted to read it. I wanted to look at the album cover and appreciate how the band made, the album artwork correspond with the songs I'm listening to. I wanted to see, is there any pictures of them in the studio? I'd never been in a studio before, but I wanted to see, are there pictures of them in the studio? I want to see what they look like when they're just in that creative process. And so, from a very early point, I somehow appreciated all of it at once. And I could never get enough. And, like when I talk about my mom dancing with me to the Thriller album, I remember like vinyl records. I remember that my dad had vinyl, my mom had vinyl. And so whenever an album would come out, you would see these very large, beautifully printed thoughtfully artistic expressions of the music I was listening to, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And we've come such a long way where I remember when the first iPod that I saw, and used in person when that came out, and now iPods are gone. Now we just have our phones, we have streaming services, and by and large, the artistic expression of an album is lost during streaming times, but it's not gone, because of course, vinyl still exists, and people who are music enthusiasts really kind of gravitate towards that art form, that the vinyl album and stuff like that. But it was everywhere at once. And I was a cassette guy because I had a boombox in my room. So CDs were something I bought later. But since I was so young, I probably had a BMG and Columbia House membership or memberships by the time I was 10 or 11 years old. So this would have been like 1992, 1993. And so of course CDs were around, but I didn't have a CD player in my room. So I had Weezer, I had, like I said, Rage Against the Machine, all their first albums on cassette tape coming to me from, in the mail from Columbia House. BMJ would have been 12 years old at that time, 1994. Rage was 1992, I think. Mm-hmm. The self-titled first record. And so, it's just like, I was so excited all the time when I got a cardboard box in the mail. Mom said, "Oh, you got some mail from one of your music subscriptions." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait." I put it in, put my headphones on, and just listen all the way through and find my favorite songs. I remember I would notice the songs that were going to be singles before they would come out. So when like Dookie came out by Green Day, and I would listen to it, like, "Oh, I like this song, When I Come Around." And then When I Come Around would be like the next radio single with the music video. I'd be like, "Oh, I guess I noticed the songs that even a punk band like Green Day is going to choose as the most popular songs to help grow the band." And so being so young, it's not like I was having these like business meetings with myself as I was listening, for example, but I would just kind of understand, a little bit of all of it because I just was so curious, and some of it made a lot of sense to me, and some of it was really exciting for me. And so that was all I could get my hands on. I wanted it. And of course I was like a really outgoing kid, and we moved a lot when I was young. And so I had to kind of put myself out there a number of school years to be the new kid in the new class at the new school. And as soon as I found a friend who liked music, I would just start to, be able to talk about any artist, any genre, with excitement, and passion, and a little bit of knowledge about it. And so that kind of helped me out. I played sports too, but music was always the thing that I wanted to connect with my friends over.
Yeah. And I think it is one of those things where we started this during COVID, and one of the biggest reasons why was because I went to a lot of shows every month, and I missed meeting people I'd never met before, just being able to talk music for hours on end. And it was so exciting. And it was one of the reasons why I loved live music so much. I love live music because I'm there to see the bands that are playing, but I also love seeing the enthusiasm of everyone around, and then being able to just chat with people, being in a place where there's a seat. I sit down and there's one extra seat. I'm at a show by myself. A guy is there by himself. He goes, "Do you mind if I sit here?" "No, go right ahead." We became friends. We exchanged numbers. Because we're on the same level with music, and it has such that brings life. I think it, no matter how happy or how sad a song is, it brings life to people and emotions. And it's so spectacular. And what you're doing and have done recently in the past couple of years is exploring new ways to channel that music. And I mean, I think it's pretty interesting, and I'd love to hear your thought on how you came up with, the stuff that you were doing. I mean, you did the 30 for under 30 for Forbes with the Sensory, and then you did Light with UN. I mean, where did all of that just constantly trying to grow and finding new things? Because you brought it up, we new platforms are becoming something, and you brought up the iPod. I mean, to think that the iPod isn't really that old and it went away so fast, but it was so influential on what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to constantly be changing with the times, and you're doing that with what you're doing. You want to touch on that, what your virtual reality experiences that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to. Well, I mean, one of the best moments in my life was meeting Jacob Marshall, the drummer in my band May, when I was a freshman in college, and he was a senior, and we would sit in one of our cars and just listen to music for hours when we first became friends. And I was showing him indie rock and emo bands that I loved. Clarity, Jimmy Eat World came out in 1999.
Pivotal album in actual, if somebody wants to classify something emo, that's the pivotal album.
Yeah, and it's really funny because like an album like Clarity sounds nothing like an album like Diary by Sunny Day Real Estate.
Yeah, the Godfathers. I if you listen back to all the time we talk about emo, I call them the Godfathers of what emo became.
Totally. And then you think of Jimmy Eat World, just an album after Clarity, they put out Bleed American, and that has The Middle on it, which is their strongest, biggest, most well-known single. And they sound like a pop rock band. You know?
But before that too, Static Prevails came out before that. And Static Prevails is, I mean, that's a hard hitting, almost on the cusp of being punk rock.
Yeah, it's got punk rock, it's got like straight up guitar rock and roll to it. A lot of drum grooves that are more in that pop punk world. And then Clarity's so light in terms of its tone. A lot of, songs without distortion on the guitars, and big vocal harmonies and string arrangements. And so I'm listening to those albums and I'm sharing them with him, and he's sharing with me this piece that he wrote on the piano for his senior thesis. And so I'm like, wait, you get to write a song on piano for your senior thesis? What are you? And he's studying aesthetic theory, the idea of what is beauty and how we perceive beauty. And what is beautiful to you is different from what is beautiful to me. And even if what is beautiful to you is also beautiful to me, I might have different elements that I am inspired by and draw from in order to recognize that beauty. And you're right and I'm right. Neither of us is wrong, because it's our perception of beauty that allows us to filter and feel. And why can we listen to a song and cry when we hear it? Why can we listen to a song and go back to the same place that we heard that song for the first time every single time? And how does it give us goosebumps? How do we actually physically feel music if we're not standing in front of the speaker and letting it vibrate on us? There are these things that we can't help but perceive. So I'm like hearing Jacob talk about that. And so for his senior thesis, he wrote this piano piece called Seasons, which ended up being released as a track on one of the May EPs. We had in 2009, we put out Morning and Afternoon and Evening. And on the evening EP, finally, a decade after he wrote it, basically, Seasons comes out. It was technically the first May piece ever written. And a decade later, we got to put it out. But it is his musical interpretation of this place up in Canada, I believe, called Prince Edward Island, which is where like the Anne of Green Gables stories are based out of. And he loved that growing up as a kid. So he wanted to write a musical piece that starts in the summer and goes into fall, into winter, into spring, back into summer from the perspective of the piano. And so like he's writing music to make it sound like the first snowfall, writing music to make it sound like spring is alive and the plants are growing flowers again, and the animals are coming out and they're playing, and he wrote this piece of music and it sounded like that. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, this is amazing. And here's an emo band, or here's an indie rock band, or here's a hip hop artist, and they make me feel things that I can't describe except to know that they're doing it in a way that speaks to me on a deeper level. And so the funny thing about Jacob is that he's a drummer, and he only wrote that piece on piano after choosing a key and learning all of the ways he wanted to manipulate that key on the piano. If you ask him to write something, say in the key of A, he'll be like, well, what notes are in the key of A? Like he's not a piano player's musician. He's an artist that chose to write a piece of music on the piano, and he was going to overcome every limitation and obstacle that was in his way. So we connected in college. He graduated the year that I finished my freshman year. And so I dropped out of college because a roommate of his, a guy by the name of Kenna, took me out of Virginia Beach, and I moved to Los Angeles and played in his band as a hired gun for a number of months. And I played bass, I played keys, I played guitar. Kenna was produced by the Neptunes. So that's Pharrell Williams, Chad Hugo. They were producing a lot of hip hop, a lot of rap, a lot of R&B. People might know Pharrell from like the song Happy from the soundtrack. I'm kind of blanking on the film. It's like a kid's, well, not kids, it's just an animated film. But he's, host on The Voice, or a judge, or whatever they call him, like a mentor on The Voice. He's done that a couple of seasons, and it's produced everything from Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake,
Rump Shaker.
Yes. NERD is his band with Chad, no doubt. So I'm in Kenna's band opening up as a 19-year-old kid for No Doubt, opening up for NERD, becoming friends with Pharrell, becoming friends with Chad. And my band was full of monster musicians. Our musical director ended up being the first musical director for American Idol. And then when Kelly Clarkson won the first season of American Idol, she took my friend Jason out of that, and he's been musically directing her band for years. If you watch the Kelly Clarkson show on weekdays in the morning, he's there leading the band. And so that was my musical director when I was in Kenna. And I just saw these people around me who were just monster musicians, super professional, and they loved music for the sake of the art. And so I would fly out to LA, and I'd work with these guys in this band. And I'd come back to Virginia, and I'd say, Jacob, I really want to make MAE our band. I really want to write songs and make it our thing. And so the band MAE is an acronym that stands for Multi-Sensory Aesthetic Experience. It's what he had come up with while he was studying aesthetic theory in college. He wanted to be part of art that was multi-sensory. So of course we know that means it's going to affect more than one of the senses at the same time. It goes back to me saying, oh, I hear a song and it gives me goosebumps. I feel it. And aesthetic, beauty, experience. So we wanted to make music that could touch on more than one of the senses as soon as we could. And you got to write songs. You got to start somewhere. You got to play shows. You got to start somewhere. You got to find a manager. You got to find an agent. You got to find a label, those kind of things back in the early 2000s as we did. But by the time we were making our second album, the Everglow, we were really wanting to give our listener an experience that was something that you could visualize, you could listen to, that you could almost feel. And those times also were when LimeWire and Napster, basically pirating websites for music were kind of taking over. And the iPod was a pretty much brand new invention. And so we thought, well, if we can write an album that is a concept record, and when you listen to the first track, whether you're listening to it on your iPod and you purchased it via iTunes, or you ripped it on the dark web and now you're listening to it, you're going to hear that you can only experience this album if you have the booklet. You can only experience this album if you can visualize something that our band has made in tandem with other creators for this, bigger picture, this deeper meaning. And I was a kid who read a lot of books when I was really young. And I remember that books on tape was a way to help me be really, really passionate and excited about reading when I was young. So this is sort of like us understanding that we had this dream, this love of music, and we're living this dream. We're creating music. We're reaching people. People are telling us to keep going and how our music is affecting them. And so this is like, we're going to make a multi-sensory aesthetic experience of an album of just regular pop songs that we're writing, and we'll call it the Everglow. And then we put out our major label debut called Singularity on Capitol Records. And then we were kind of burnt out and frustrated by playing the major label game and hearing our A&R tell us to write songs that are catchier, quicker, and let's not have these instrumental intros. Let's go straight to verse 1, vocals. I'm like, whoa, okay, hold on. Where are we? What is the vision for May? And so we put out morning and afternoon and evening. Once we went back to our roots, Destination Beautiful was our first record. We created it by ourselves without a label, and then we gave it to a label, and they licensed the album from us after we had created the whole thing by ourselves independently. So we went back to that approach, and morning and afternoon and evening, MAE, another way to sort of acronym around the band name, and writing songs that felt like a sunrise, that felt like a sunset, that felt like dusk and dawn. And
yeah, I got to see you guys during that time at the Gramercy in New York City.
Oh, great. So during some of those tours, if you, depending on when you came, during the releases of these songs and these albums, we would give you 3D glasses at the door because we had projection on our stage. And during one of the songs, I remember you'd be told through the projection to put on your 3D glasses. And I would bend down by my guitar pedal board, and I would hit on this power strip that before the show, after we did our sound check, I would take these high-powered industrial fans that we bought and spread out throughout the standing room on the venue floor. And it would get windy in there while the tornado was coming at you from a three-dimensional perspective. And if you were on our street team and we were communicating with you through the message board or through email back then, you would know to come to the merch table, and we'd give you a spray bottle, kind of like the ones that they use at salons when you get your hair cut. And we'd ask you to stand by that fan. So then that way, as soon as it tells you to put your 3D glasses on and I turn the fans on, you can spray that water directly into the fan, and then it's going to make it feel like it's raining all over the venue. And so we were doing things like that back in 2009, trying to have these multisensory experiences the best way that we could. And in 2016, the band was sort of on our hiatus, but we came out of hiatus because we were asked to be the first band to perform a live synced virtual reality concert experience. And so we got to perform at the Tower of David in Jerusalem, and we made a musical piece called Light that was created for virtual reality experience. So it's sort of like, I would compare it to an iTunes visualizer that syncs up to the music like those do in virtual reality. So we had about 600 to 700 people in our audience at the Tower of David who all took their phones, put them in a virtual reality viewfinder, and watched the virtual reality visual representation of the music that we were performing live in that moment. And we were able to take that to the UN. And when we took it to the UN, we stood outside in the lobby during like the actual United Nations meeting, and these world leaders and these influencers on that political level, they would take breaks from the United Nations Assembly, and they could put on a vibrating haptics vest. They could listen to Light. They could view Light in virtual reality space. And there's this moment on the climax of the song where all of the colors turn golden. And while you're standing there, you know, feeling the vibrations on this vest that you're wearing, listening to the music, seeing the virtual reality artistic expression of the song, we're even lighting Palo Santo wood, so that way you can smell something that surprises you, because you're not, you know, you've got this headset on. You can't see that we're standing right in front of you lighting some wood that has a particular scent to it. So as soon as we're done with this, we're asking the people that are experiencing this to just write down what it makes them feel, what expression it brought to their minds, their hearts, their bodies, full on multisensory aesthetic experience. And it was incredible. Like, we talked to astronauts, and astronauts would say, well, it reminds me of when I was in outer space at the International Space Station for the first time. Like, wait a minute, what? We just wrote a song and had a VR artist put some visuals to it, and we put a vest on you that had some vibration to it and lit some wood on fire so there was a scented smoke, and you got reminded of being in outer space. And it was just showing us that when you do put all of these sensory stimulations together, you can really tug at the heartstrings. And if I'm going back to that moment when I'm sitting in the car with my soon to be very, very best friend, Jacob, that I would start a band and play music with for over almost 2 decades at this point. What we were going for was, from 2 different perspectives, ultimately the same thing. I wanted to write music with my friends and collaborate with my friends in a way that would bring people a sense of joy and sadness and peace and love and confusion, all at the same time, if the songs, you know, as the songs kind of brought you to those places. And I wanted it to be sort of void of just one genre musically, based on all of the music that I loved growing up. And I wanted it to be something that meant more than just pop music, or it meant more than just let's be a band and sell out, you know, venues and make an impact on the Billboard charts, or be on the radio. I wanted to be a band that people would see us as artists, and that people would see us as creators for a deeper, more collaborative purpose. And so when you're collaborating your senses, you really hit on some things that might make people feel emotional. You know, people would take off their headsets after this 4-minute piece of music, where they had this virtual reality experience, and they'd be crying, and they would take them to a place, you know, in their childhood or in their deepest, most special relationships. And that wasn't our intention, even though it was. Like, we wanted that to be the thing that we thought we could do, but we didn't know how to do it because we didn't have a formula for it. We just wrote from the heart. We found the professor of VR at NYU and collaborated with him. And we found a neuroscientist who created this haptics vest. And we said, okay, well, we want to partner up with you. And we just collaborated until we found ourselves being that multi-sensory, aesthetic, experiential version of May that we always wanted to be. It started off with indie rock. It started off with rock and roll and pop music and little elements of other genres here and there. And over time, we were able to be like a DIY version of a multi-sensory aesthetic experience. And then by 2016, we had the boldness and the network and the connections and friendships and opportunities to where we could find ourselves at this event. And what you were talking about, it was Forbes magazine or Forbes.com. They collected about 600 or so people under the age of 30. It's 30 under 30. And these people are the most prominent, successful, innovative in the tech space, education, art, medicine, entertainment, sports, and they all come together. We had a 4-day conference, 2 days in Tel Aviv, 2 days in Jerusalem. And on the last night in Jerusalem, we all got together at the Tower of David and had a celebration of this event. So like during those 4 days, the tech people would get into their space and there would be conversations and panels and lectures. And then you'd break into these small groups and you talk about, well, how do we change the future for the sake of peace and harmony on our planet? How do we take care of our planet from an environmental perspective? How do we take care of our planet from a way to engage in less conflict? And how do we get rid of war over a period of time by honesty and vulnerability and communication? And so those are things that matter to our band, whether we want to get political or we want to be overly outspoken about things. We let our music do the talking. And so we found ourselves in a place where we could be an influence in this really cool collective. Now, we were over the age of 30 when we did this, but we were friends with the editor, the chief editor of Forbes magazine. So we told him, we said, hey, why don't you cap off this 30 under 30 with the first ever virtual reality concert experience? And he said, okay, well, if you can do it, then you're going to be part of it. And so it was on us to really create this moment and have it be part of the event. And we did that. And then once we had created it, we started to take it to wonderful places like the UN, and even just to be something that we opened up for when we went on our normal kind of venue tours. We'd go to Japan, and if you got to the meet and greet before we played Tokyo, you might not be able to speak English and communicate with us, but we'd have you listen to Light and put a vest on you and a virtual reality headset. And you get 4 minutes in this virtual multi-sensory space, and we would connect with you in a way that, words could not express. And that's really been the heart of May since the year 2000. And we were able to really start to make that a part of our actual artistic expression through the years.
Well, that's amazing. From just being a band to creating not only the music, but the feeling of music. It's, again, I guess you guys are like the iPod. In a short period of time, the progression is unbelievable. It's outstanding. And I mean, these are experiences that I'm sure will continue to grow. And the fact that you started that and then you're going to continue doing it. And I'm sure it's only going to become a larger stage at some point where the entire arena will be a virtual reality arena. We look forward to that. So what is, I mean, the good Lord willing, moving forward and things start to get back to some normalcy, what's up next for May?
Well, we just were together over the Thanksgiving holiday and performed our two oldest albums from start to finish, Destination Beautiful and the Everglow, for the not virtual reality, but like a virtual concert. So we played those songs live in a venue in front of nobody and then filmed it and captured the audio. And for the rest of 2020, you can go to our website, whatismay.com, or you can go to whatismay-store.com, and you can listen and watch us perform those albums from start to finish. And so now that we're talking about a vaccine and we're talking about getting back to sort of a new normal, May wants to perform and play shows again. We put out an album in 2018 called Multisensory Aesthetic Experience. It's literally self-titled, and there are two versions of the album. There's the one that you can listen to, on Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, etc., Google Play. But then there's a version where if you purchase it from our website, it comes with what looks like a bigger CD. It's like the packaging is just a little bit larger than a CD, but what you do when you receive it in the mail, I guess, is the way we're doing things right now, since we're not performing and we don't have a merch table at our shows. You actually disassemble this thing and turn it into a VR headset. And so with that, you get an alternate version of the album where all the songs are connected to each other. There's additional production on each song and extra songs, and it's a virtual reality experience from start to finish. And it's really good for COVID times, since we all have to sort of be isolated or we have to be in quarantine here and there. Listening to a May album that you can visualize. We didn't know the pandemic was coming, but we made this record in 2018, and it's a good way to express May, multisensory aesthetic experience, during tough times of a pandemic like this. And then once we can get back together more often, I'm sure there'll be more May music. I'm talking to you from my studio, and we all live in different parts of the country. So Jacob lives in Brooklyn, and then our guitar player Zach lives in Virginia Beach. But when we can get together, it's really always very much on purpose. We're not the kind of band that can just meet on a Friday night on a whim and play music for 2 hours and see how it goes. We really have to coordinate and plan every step of the process almost before we get to the process. So I hope that the guys will come out to Nashville and we can work on some May music here at Schematic Studios, my studio spot here just in North Nashville. And over the summer, I took advantage of Facebook Live and started showing up on Saturday nights on the May Facebook channel to do some acoustic performances of May songs, solo material I've written, and even covers and stuff. And so I've got some music that I've been writing, some songs I've been writing, and I'll probably take them a step further from demo form and do a little bit of production on them and send them to the guys and see what they think about them. And maybe those will be like the first steps for new May music in the near future.
All right. Well, we look forward to it. I sure do. I'm sure our listeners will as well. And don't want to keep you much longer. I think I've kept you long enough, and I can sit here and talk to you all day long about music.
Too. I'm long-winded at times. I love talking, and it's always just an honor if somebody wants to ask me a question, because I don't ever think of myself as that interesting of a person. So I get excited when these questions get asked, because I have lived a full life through music, and not that I dismissed it. I just forget it because, like I said, I'm getting close to 40, and the most important thing in my life is a 19-year-old toddler. And so I forget sometimes, some of the things that I've been able to accomplish with my band and through music. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Well, I'm going to end this for us, and we end every episode with our weekly threes. I'd like to find out 3 things that you're listening to right now. They could be, doesn't matter what it is. People throw out audiobooks, whatever their children are listening to. But if you got 3 things, bands, people, anything that you're listening to that you'd like to give our listeners something to check out.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. 3 things that I'm listening to. Well, right now, I'm personally in the Christmas spirit, so I'm going through and listening to Casey Musgrave's Christmas album, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers' Christmas album, Alvin and the Chipmunks' Christmas album. I'm not going to put those as 3. I'll just say that's one of my 3 because we're 8 days from Christmas while I'm talking to you, and I'm trying to get my little girl into the Christmas spirit. And this is going to be like her first year, literally opening presents and stuff like that.
Understanding it.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of making sure that there's a daily soundtrack to that stuff. In general, I had mentioned Radiohead when I was home for the holidays and working with May. We got on a appreciation for Radiohead kick, and we got into a little bit of a debate, about which album was the best and which production season was the strongest. And so I'm listening to like all of the Radiohead collection right now. And I am going back to what we were talking about earlier about sort of being in love with all of the genres when they connect. Back then it was like the songs were so different one from another, but now you've got like Ben Gibbard singing on a Chance the Rapper album, or you've got Justin Vernon, Bon Iver, doing production on a Kanye track.
Bon Iver with Taylor Swift. I mean, it's...
Yeah, exactly. So like Kids See Ghosts was Kid Cudi and Kanye album that came out a little while ago, when Kanye was putting out an album every single week, something he had produced and been a part of. And there's like a Nirvana sample on one of the songs. And so I'm just loving in general how hip hop and rap feels like it's pulling from genres that are so different. So you got like Francis and the Lights, which is like an artist who's also a producer songwriter who does a lot of production work for other hip hop artists. And so, in general, I just love it when I can't tell what genre it is. I can't tell, who the one artist is, because it feels like a collaborative process. And so I think like some of the best hip hop right now, sounds a little bit like everything, but in a most unique way. So, like Frank Ocean, Bon Iver, if you can like Frank Ocean and Bon Iver, because they're both like so avant-garde for what hip hop or alternative was a decade ago. Alternative used to be REM.
Yeah.
And hip hop used to be Snoop Doggy Dogg, Doggy Style or something, and now it's like, well, wait, like Frank Ocean sounds like more emo than Jimmy World. It's like, that's so interesting to me, the way that that's happening in music. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. So my 3 for this week are Ocean Size They're from Manchester, England. They named themselves after Jane's Addiction song, going back to the old 90s stuff.
Cool.
They have an album called Frames, which I highly recommend if anybody was ever into the band Fireside. It's kind of reminds me of Fireside. Another band that I've been into this week is We Came From Wolves, Scottish rock band. They are just extremely talented, hard hitting, great rock and roll to listen to. And my last one for this week is the Marcus King Band out of South Carolina. Very bluesy Southern rock. It brings back that 60s Southern rock that's just, sorely missed at times. Pretty awesome. Check those guys out. But Dave, I can't thank you enough for doing this. It has been an absolute honor to have you on the show today. And is there anything else you'd like to get out to the people listening out there, your fans, other ways to find you?
You can search Dave Elkins, and you can find me on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is. I'm not great at social media just because I'm a little bit older and I like privacy more than I like to take pictures of everything I do on a regular basis. But my studio is called Schematic Studios, and it's a vision that I've had for a number of years. And going back to talking about mental health, like we did, a lot at the very beginning of our conversation today, I just want to point people to nonprofits like To Write Love on Her Arms and Music Cares. And I just want to encourage people that if you are struggling with depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, all those things that can become quickly taboo, this is the year to not make things taboo. This is the year, and it doesn't end at the end of 2020. 2021 is just another opportunity for us to be honest and vulnerable. And so I just want to encourage your listeners to find friendships where you can be as vulnerable as possible, and let music be a bridge to get you there. That's what we talked about so much today, is music. And I just want to say thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can even just send me an email at dave@schematicstudios.com, and I'll do my best to get to you in a timely manner.
Well, we appreciate everything you've done. We look forward to the future together. And as we end this, as always, everybody go out and have a great time.
Awesome.